In this video, dive into the movie A Christmas Carol. We discuss the storyline, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and character. Additionally, we will cover the movie's production details and box office performance. Finally, we will provide reviews and share personal reactions. So let's get started. Los Angeles Jim Carrey's College collective holiday donation. From movie fans with his new take on King, our pop out to the number one. Spotters Michael Jackson's This Is the It Supply slipped to second place with $14 million according to studio estimates Sunday. Sony's This Is It, presenting the rehearsal performances. Jackson shot before his set last June, raised its domestic total to $59 million. This Is It has taken only $186 million, featuring Carrey as Ebenezer Scrooge and also as the Holiday. On the other end of the spectrum, Lionsgate's acclaimed drama Precious, based on the novel Pushed by the Sapphire, had a spectacular start, pulling in $1.8 million in just 13 theater, averaging $1 lakh million cinema. That compared with an average of A Christmas Carol in 683 theater. Precious had a record average for films opening in 10 or more theater. Others that have averaged 1 lakh or more typically debut in only a few cinema. The weekend brought a rush of other new movie, led by George Clooney's comedy, The Man Who Started Court, which finished number 3 with $13.3 million. The overture films released its satire look at US military effort to create warrior monks who can predict a future or walk through walk. Debuting in fourth place with $12.5 million was in versus The Fourth Kind, starring Mila as a psychologist studying alien in Alaska. Cameron Diaz and James sci-fi tale The box opened at number 6 with $7.9 million. The Warner Bros. Thriller centers on a couple given a mysterious box that can provide them $1 million, but at the cost of a stranger life. With nearly 2 months of playing time to the holiday, Disney is counting on steady business for A Christmas Carol, particularly over Thanksgiving weekend and in the build-up to Christmas itself. You have to play these things for the long term, said Chuck beyond Disney's side of distribution. You have got to have the pensions and you have got to pick the right weekend. For us, the day when these malls turn to Christmas store is when we want you to go. Director Robert shot the movies using the same performances capture technology used on his 2004 holiday offering. The Polar Express Carey and his co-star acted on our base soundtrack as a digital camera caught their performances, with computer animators later adding costume, sets, props, and other effect. A Christmas Carol came in ahead of Polar Express, which had an opening weekend of $23 million, but it fell well short of the $55.1 million opening for Carey's previous holiday tale. Dr. Seo's Hottie Grinch Stole Christmas in 2000. Holiday-themed films tend to hold up well through the season. Among them, Disney's The Santa Claus comedies after its modest start. The Polar Express went on to become a $160 million hit by the end of its run and has become a holiday perennial in rare release in the huge screen IMAX theater. A Christmas Carol did 3/4 of its business in theaters showing 3D versions. Huge screen IMAX theater, which represented only 5% of the theater count, accounted for $4.5 million or 14.5 million% of the movie's total gross, said Greg Foster, IMAX chairman and the president. Precious, which won the top award last year's Sundance Film Festival, stars newcomer Sidibe as a Harlem teen who gradually rises above an upbringing of incest, abuse, and illiteracy. After Sundance of Winfrey and Taylor signed as executive producer, helping to separate the word on Precious. A lot of movie goers are not happy with the release plan right now because it's not in their cities yet, said David Spires, head of the distribution for Lionsgate. That's always a good sign. Estimated ticket sales for Friday through Sunday at US and Canadian theatre, according to Hollywood.com. Final figure will be released Monday. Well, if you don't know these stories, you have been living in cave in Outer Mongolia for the past 190 years. This is a computer animated version of Charles Dickens' classic tale of Mr. Scrooge and how the spirits of Christmas visit him on Christmas Eve to redeem his severed soul. Voices are provided by Bob Hoskins, Gary Oldman, and Jim Carrey, among others. The English novelist Charles Dickens was not a very nice chap. He kept his wife pregnant for nearly 15 years, producing 6 living children, and when she was played out and her looks began to fail due to the strain of the Victorian childbirth and child earning, he divorced her so he could hang out with the English stage actress Ellen Cherry, whom he never married. He could be convivial and charming, especially after several trips to the punch ball, but his terrible temper alienated him from most of his friends, publishers, and business partners over the course of a long and prosperous life. Having suffered great want and in his own mind, great humiliation as a child, Dickens expected and received big money for his novel. Once he became a household word for publication of the Pickwick paper. He was not so much greedy for money as in desperate need of to feed his mania to wander. He was forever taking his family and friends to Italy, France, America, and around England and Scotland on a constant merry-go-round of reading out tour or visit to hell space to regain some of the energy he used up in a blaze of activities that ranged from an investigation of Savor of London to editing and doing most of writing for several popular monthly magazines. He was judgmental and prone to drink too much when in the company of male companion. It's a story that no amateur can ever read out loud without breaking into tears and sobbing like a baby near the end of it. Scrooge's story, as told in the Christmas Carol, is ageless and timeless. It's a track directly at the heart of the ferocity of a pied viper. It's been around so long now that he both love it and hate it. Like the story of Job in the Bible, every person can relate to in one way or another, and also scoff at his publicist belief as a creaky fairy tale. There have been the countless versions of a Christmas Carol on the silver screen, on TV in comic book, and on radio. Then none of them have ever done very well when it comes to the bottom line. After all, there is no much thing as Scrooge fan club as movie fair. Disney might as well have put out a film entitled This Rise and Fall of the Ohio. Scrooge is too much apart for us to be of much interest at the box office. Scrooge vs. Batman. The strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Scrooge. 50 Shades of the Scourge. About a bard and Ebenezer Scrooge of Mars. When a production budget of $90 million, a worldwide box office percent 1.7 times. The production budget Disney's A Christmas Carol 2009 domestically and grossed $177 million overseas at box office. Disney's Christmas Carol 2009 played to 3,683 theater and total gross in its opening weekend. The film played to a total 3,683 theater domestically and took a domestic share of the sum 43.7%, having ranked number in its opening weekend and hold close to its second place in its second weekend, running for a total place in its second weekend. After 10 weeks with an average weekend domestic gross based on a 6.4 weeks average run per theater, Disney's A Christmas Carol 2009 was ranked 20 in top 2009 movies at the international box office, with a total lifetime revenue of $177 million. All-time international animated box office rank was 98. All-time international box office for Walt Disney movie rank came in at 1%. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens was first published in December 1843 by Champion and Hall and is 127 pages. Length varies depending on edition. This book has been adapted for stage and screen countless times. Christmas Carol is one of my favorite movies of all time, and its popularity over the years has remained constant. Scrooge is a very miserly and mean old man who hates Christmas and everything associated with it. One Christmas Eve, he is visited by the ghost of his dead business partner, Jacob, who shows up to warn him that he will be visited by three spirit ghosts of the Christmas past, present, and yet to come. In turn, three spirits arrive and takes Courage on a journey to his pivotal moment in his life to so that he can learn from his mistakes and mend his ways. Ebenezer Scrooge is a man who, at the start of the story, cares only about himself and his money. He has become proud through the years, his heart no cold. But throughout the story, we learn why he is the way he is. Bob Cratchit Scrooge's termed long-suffering clerk who would sooner warm his hand with a scandal done complaint to his boss. He is a very kind man, and we see this in how he interacts with his family and ever interview he told Scrooge. Even Scrooge won't even pay him in a fair wage. Bob and the rest of the Cratchit family are very close knit and appear happy even though they live in poverty. Their youngest child, Teeny Tom, is sicky though still very much joyful. And as the story progresses, it seems that I find myself rooting for most. My favorite characters are the ghosts. Usually in a ghost story, the spirits are meant to frighten. But with a Christmas Carol, it's a bit different. None of the ghosts actually mean Scrooge any harm. They only want to guide him and help him learn about himself. Even the ghost of Jacob Marley, who comes to warn Scrooge of the three ghosts visiting, is only trying to help him. Scrooge is a fearful hymn of his first. My first memories of a Christmas Carol are from when I was small. My parents would read it to me at bedtime around the Christmas season, and I was always captivated by the magic of story and the characters. Growing older, I have come to appreciate the story on different level. While at first glance it might seem to be a marvelous story about Christmas, it's actually deeply woven social commentary about the state of the country, and in particular London. At the time Dickens wrote the book, in his writing, he addresses poverty and class division, subtly weaving it all with brilliant storytelling. As you read the book, are you transported to Victorian London? And in fact, whenever I think of the Victorian period, I picture the image my mind created in London, A Christmas Carol. I believe this is because Dickens was merely showing us the world precisely as he saw it, relaying it perfectly. It feels, at least to me, that the story was written with great passion, and I believe because of this. The message Dickens wanted to relay when he told is clear, and that is he hoped people would learn that it's never too late to change, and that kindness costs nothing but is worth everything. A message, I might add, that is still very much relevant today. I pick up A Christmas Carol just about once a year. I love it and never get bored of reading it. It gives me great comfort and a sense of nostalgia, reminding me of my late parents and my own childhood Christmas. It is truly a classic, and if you have never read it, whenever you have been, and you are looking for something festive to read, I would strongly recommend it. It's heartwarming and there is something here for everyone. There is a Christmas, there are ghosts, and there is great. So grab a copy, a nice warm drink, and a blanket, and get stuck in. You won't be disappointed. I give A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens full mark definitely. A very Merry Christmas to one and all. The 15th celebrate here on the blog. I hope you all have a wonderful day and get some wonderful presents books for this big day. For many of those 15 years, I have been attending to get around to convening a certain festival, but something else I always seemed to get in the way. Fortunately, this time around, I have found myself slightly more prepared. A Christmas Carol was first published in 1843, and it's fair to say that it's made quite an impression in the English-speaking world, and probably beyond too. The story of a miserly man visited by a series of ghosts on the night before Christmas, who show him vision of the past, present, and possible future, is as much as palpable Our festive season as turkey dinner, chocolate overdoses, and terrible music. It's a book I am convinced I have read at some point long ago. But as well we say, it can be hard to be sure given the number of adaptations that have permeated popular culture over the years. Scrooge himself is a quest for applications we have immediately introduced to the anti-Christmas poster by Dickens and a describing man who is frankly speaking not very nice, but was a tired fisted hand at the grindstone. Scrooge sequencing, Frenching, dropping save of the book provides us with plenty of examples of Scrooge's mean spirit as he rejects his nephews friendly. Dismisses a pair of hopeful charity collectors and scared of a poor, quavering carol singer Bob Lumbing indeed. Of course, is a wonderful little story, but it's also an excellent example of Dickens' genius. The book is full of his usual descriptive majesty, such as his depiction of the dark, miserable London street in winter. Suddenly, it is transformed by the cheer of the festive season, and his eye, for small details, has the effect of pulling us further into the story. The trademark Dickens humor is present, as John merely is explaining to Scrooge about what's to come, including encounter with the tree spirit. Without the wishes, as sad he goes, you cannot hope to some departed hatred. Acts very first to narrow, when he fell to Dalsmore. I have avoided discussing the plot too much here, for the obvious reason that most of you will be well aware of it. However, it's so surprising how much my remembered version, corrupted by the adaptations, deviates from the actual book, quite from being surprised that the actual title is A Christmas Carol in prose being a ghost story of Christmas. I have forgotten that Scrooge is taken back to see himself in his school days, engrossed in the reading about Ali Baba and Robinson Crusoe, and the scene in which the spirit of Christmas present with Scrooge out the seas to witness Christmas celebration. In the end, it's all about a grumpy old Ebenezer being injected with a healthy dose of Christmas spirit, waking up in time to celebrate with the rest of London and make life a little better for those around him. A Christmas Carol is one of those works of art. It's hard to think of a world without it. Just imagine the reception when it first appeared, in a world whereby nobody, and ever heard it in term. I'm sure for many readers, that was a very Merry Christmas in nest. But why did I finally manage to remember to cover the book? Well, that would be one of those adaptations I was talking about, namely the Muppet Christmas Carol. While there have been a host of reimagination of the tale since it first appeared in print, the puppet version is the one the main folk of my generation will probably remember. It features of all of your favorite Muppet, with the added bonus of Michael Caine as Scrooge himself. Perhaps the biggest surprise about the family is how closely it followed it back. Caine is excellent as the cold-hearted anti-hero, with some of the early scenes allowing him to spit bell at all his sundry. And when I read the book the following day, I was pleased to recognize much of the text, such as the nice passage when Scrooge's nephew Fred attempts to wish him a Merry Christmas. That is not Nick Murphy's A Christmas Carol is not your community theater version of the Charles Dickens classic story, and it definitely has more images of that than the Muppets Christmas Carol. Instead of FX original movie, airing in its entirely Thursday, December 19 in the rock and gritty version of a holiday story that was already about a man cruelty. Various some stories seem to pull back on Ebenezer Scrooge's destructive selfishness. This one goes all and it make for approximately 3 joyless hours. Watching an adaptation start to justice is agent, adapted for screen by Steven. A Christmas Carol. After a murkier journey down a familiar story path, and exists as his weird experiment to see If he rewards Scrooge can manage his more adult flaw. Guy Pearce plays easy introduction of the holiday hater with plenty of gold star, transforming Scrooge's cold indifference to the holiday into the downright villainy. People have died directly because of his distaste for people. The movie will talk about and then show us Pierce is formidable in iconic role, but his performances and his take on the character is not in the least surprising. For good measure, night version starts of the someone passing on a gravestone of Jacob Marley. Scrooge's partner is creating a selfish enterprise that control the lives of Bob and his family, including his wife Mary and their son Jenny Tom. Marley's pleas for redemption while stuck in the answer with the demand that Scrooge must prepare to. Knowing that it's impossible, Mary nonetheless appears to tell Scrooge about a Christmas ghost who will visit him as a type of reckoning. Night a sacred blending a lot of them with Scrooge's and the ghosts of the Christmas past, who turns into the important figure from Scrooge's past, like his father Franklin, or his favorite literary character as a child, Ali Baba. This makes for a scene that looks like it could give the story a sense of life. Scrooge is meeting the childhood hero, who filled his imagination for years until it came to the memory that involved child abuse, and Scrooge being rescued by his sister from a predator boarding schoolmaster. This Christmas carol has darker ideas for how Scrooge would maliciously people, giving so far as to get Scrooge verifiably cancelled. One can't help but think that the story involving him harassing Mary Cratchit was added in part because of recent public reckoning with a high-profile predator. It does not feel out of place in terms of Murphy's relentlessly black zone, but the executive is tone deaf as it handing of Scrooge down history of abuse, especially with his place in the story of forgiveness. While this is tangent, does give Mary Cratchit a bigger presence than she had in the other iteration, and makes for a stalwart performances from Benedict Robinson is a recklessly half-baked concept, unable to fill his oppressively black color palette with anything that's particularly scary. There are a few good moments of nasty special effect, including a remote job. A Christmas Carol is copied with pain as the addition to the Dickens tale. But as harrowing as it may be to see victim of Scrooge's mind collapses or a Scrooge factory fire, you know what classic realization Scrooge will ultimately have when he sees such ornate suffering and such familiarity feels for the grandiose statement this adaptation wants to make. There is something strange about the adult factor of this movie too. A rare Christmas Carol that is decidedly not family fare given some of its language and general content. An attempt to steer the story away from family seems relatively pointless, as moralizing stories always seem best when their aim involves kids. The everlasting idea behind A Christmas Carol is that its lessons can radio signal any person in progress, just like a monologue from Mr. Roger is for all ages, without needing to use gravery in serious language. Instead, this movie's limits are obvious in terms of its eloquence and its targeted audiences. A Christmas Carol even seems to be thwarted by the everything it's about. Anytime the holiday is mentioned, it breaks the movie's desired spell of being its own dangerous beast. Instead, you are reminded that all of it is still about that so deadly serious holiday of Christmas. Yes, you have seen this story before. You have undoubtedly had more fun watching someone else take on it. When it was announced that Robert Zemeckis was directing adaptations of Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol starring Jim Carrey, and made 3D motion capture, my response was virtually negative. Zemeckis had left behind movies like Back to the Future and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, movies with the characters and charming stories, in favor of 3D motion captured films featuring CG characters who resemble the voice actor, except they have trapped deep within the uncanny valley. The place where CG facsimiles of people look like very expensively animatronics. Throwing Jim Carrey into the mix to have constantly mug 4D camera made the idea of 3D motion capture films even more unappealing and A Christmas Carol. How many times do we need to see the story? Seeing it in 3D with Jim Carrey as Ebenezer Scrooge was an argument not to make the movie. He did the jump to find out why all the perceived flaws are actually the film's greatest strength. And then I saw the opening scene of film at Comic Con and first line of Dickens' take. Merely was that coupled with the son of Marley's ghost terrorizing Scrooge. I have been excited for the movies ever seen. A Christmas Carol is not only another step forward in a flood of 3D motion captured cinema, but an audience will realize that when you have ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, you have a ghost story, and ghost stories are supposed to be scary. A Christmas Carol will make you little children cry and really enjoy the movies. There may be loose correlations between the two. Since you already know the story, I will explain that Zemeckis has done to make it worth your time. To begin, as he showed with his period film, we will face a beyond shooting object out of screen just because he can. The purpose of 3D in A Christmas Carol is for infinite depth of field and uninterrupted camera movement. Where A Christmas Carol takes a huge step forward is in motion capture and CG human. Through a new program used to track rental movement, Zemeckis has solved the dead eye problem. And while there are few characters who still seem animatronic, most of all Scrooge's nephew Fred. Scrooge is alive. The character's greatest technical asset in his age so that the facial movements are distinct and the tightness of the skin allow for subtle and technical. Are distinct and the tightness of skin allow for subtle text and tiny details which make the character feel realistic, but not pretending as if this is not animation. With the eye problem solved, Zemeckis' next challenge will be skin, as the film's chubbier and younger characters still look off. But why am of Jim Carrey when you have Jim Carrey? What's the point that is providing that you can? While it would be no challenge to put Scrooge makeup no Carrey, the advantage of animations is that it can be age him. He can play his character as a child, as a young man, as a flickering childlike ghost of Christmas past, and the hearty ghost of Christmas present. Carrey Oldman can play not only Bob Cratchit, but Cratchit's son Cheney Jam, and Scrooge's former partner, Jacob Marley. It's not a matter of trying to save money to one actor, but a thoughtful reason for having one actor play multiple roles. This is not an Eddie Murphy movie. Also, unlike an Eddie Murphy movie, A Christmas Carol intentionally scared children. As I said before, this is a ghost story, and parents should know that if they pay the $15 million per ticket to the 3D version, they may only get to see about the 30-minute of film before their child want to leave. If you pay to see the IMAX 3D version, tell your kid that the economy sucks and they will be have to touch that. There was a time when it was okay to have scary moment in kids movie. Parents will be left wondering how this movie and where the well things are. God PG rating, my answer to don't have swear word, you are welcome. It's simple to dismiss Robert Zemeckis and his ongoing quest to tell stories in 3D, with motion capture but I am learning to have faith in him. A Christmas Carol speak in a Dickensian English with some serious vocabulary for a family film. Features scare that even adults will find unnerving. And if not for a 5-minute set pieces that's out of place with the rest of the film's tone. This version is a successful telling of tale. You will still cling with. God bless you everyone. But that is one uniqueness. Give some credit to Robert Zemeckis. On December 19, 1834, after Charles Dickens published his story, A Christmas Carol, an apparently timeless holiday classic that has not been out of print for nearly 150 years. Since then, there have been numerous films adaptations and parodies among the writing and film community. The latest of this Christmas tale came in form of the November 6, 2009 release of Disney's A Christmas Carol, directed by Robert Zemeckis and starring Jim Carrey as infamous Mrs. Ebenezer. Just like the original from Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol followed the events that transpired over the period of a single night. As the cynical and antagonistic Scrooge is visited by the three ghosts of the Christmas. These three spirits attempt to change Scrooge's outlook on a winter holiday by showing him the flickering memories of his past. The present trial that is this date for Christmas has brought upon the people close to him, and eventually, where all of these misgiving and anger will lead if Scrooge continues on his part. And I can really say at this point is that the story seems a little tried in these films, yet still completely of Dickens' work, which I do respect. These two factors pile into a quite a conflict of theatre. Using cutting-edge visual effect, comparable to those used in the films The Polar Express, this movie tried to bring the original text from Dickens back to life in a supposedly new way that only today's technology can handle. The computer graphics of this movie are some of the best of our time, but the story is nothing new from what you have seen before, which leads me to believe that he is simply a modernization of the story, rather than the retelling the movie claimed to be. Our earlier film was not that impressive but not a failure either. It's really right on the fence. I was surprised to see how close they remained to the actual text from Dickens. But overall, I was disappointed to see the same basic repeat of every other adaptation ever made of this story, except with the computer-generated images and big names like Carrey to help expand the fable. The film may have bored me, but I must admit that it still does have the Christmas charm, lesser that the original story always seemed to be possessed. However, I really expected this movie to go outside the box that Charles Dickens originally created, and the show was something new, something that would create more of an enticement without drastically changing the story. Perhaps releasing in its November instead of December was a mistake. A Christmas Carol has grossed roughly $52 million in worldwide ticket sale so far, but it has a long way to go to repay its original film's budget of its almost $200 million. And in the community of film critics, the film is receiving an overall rating for average at best. In my honest opinion, this story has been bent and twisted so much to fit the current culture and to somewhat modernize the entire story, with just about every idea that could be convinced have already been done. There's lousy certain ghost story Christmas tale flair that Charles Dickens was able to put into this original novel, like many of the other adaptations of this movie. However, I am sure it will go down as a timeless classic to some, and an utter blunder to others. All in all, it's a decent Christmas film, with a few interesting aspects that may keep you in your seat. But I was not as excited after leaving the theatre as I expected to be after seeing such a film. However, I would recommend it as a great family film for the holiday. If you are a fan of the Jim Carrey, or perhaps you just enjoy the atmosphere that the Polar Express produces, check out the 2009 film. Using cutting-edge visual effects comparable to those used in the films The Polar Express, this movie tried to bring the original text from the Dickens. Scrooge was better than this word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Teeny Tim, who did not, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as a good old city knew, or any other good old city, town or borough, in the good old world. Some people loved to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh. A little he did them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened to this globe for good, at which some people did not have their full of laughter in the outrest, and knowing that such as these would be blind anyway. He thought it quite as well that they should wrinkle their eyes in grain, as have made melody in the abstractive form. His own heart laughed, and that has quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirit, but left up the total absence principle, ever afterward. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. If any man alive possessed the knowledge, may that be truly said of us, and all of us, and so, as Tiny Time observed, God bless you everyone. In her devotional guide, God bless us everyone, and in chapter observe. After the nativity story, there may be no holiday story more beloved than A Christmas Carol. Our journey story has no over Christmas message. We can glean many inspirational lessons from its face. Scrooge, of course, is initially an unlikely pastor, but after his transformative experience, he becomes an inspirational ambassador of goodwill. For further reading, God bless us everyone. Devotional inspiration from A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens by Annie Tabton, 2016. The ending of Christmas Carol depicts a pivotal moment in the story, where Ebenezer Scrooge's character development comes into the fruition. As the tale draws to close, Scrooge undergoes a transformation demonstrating the importance of compassion and empathy toward others. This article will delve deeper into the ending of A Christmas Carol and examine how it is a satirical reflection on the socio-economic state of Victorian England. Before we dive into the ending of A Christmas Carol, it's essential to provide a brief overview of the story's plot. The story follows Ebenezer Scrooge, a miserly and selfish businessman, who is visited by the ghost of his former business partner, Jacob Marley. Marley warns Scrooge that he will be visited by three spirits, the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and yet to come, who will help him change his way. Over the course of the story, Scrooge is faced with the mistake of his past, the sadness of his present, and the loneliness of his future. Scrooge's experiences with the three spirits leads him to recognize the error of his way. The ending of the Christmas Carol depicts Scrooge waking up on Christmas morning. Suddenly he is filled with a newfound sense of joy and compassion, loaded with a realization that his vision from the Christmas spirit have faded back to reality. The story's structure forces Scrooge to recognize his own lack of compassion. The opening act shows him to be jaded and bitter before the second, and third act progress with the ghosts of the Christmas past and present. After this, the fourth act presents Scrooge with a devastating realization that he will ultimately die alone, whilst a group of thieves ransack his possession. Suddenly he prospects of Scrooge's mortality and a grim circumstances in which his life ends forces him to repent, which delivers his character development. As Scrooge awakens on Christmas morning, the story moves into its final act, and his character's change is expressed through a vast shift in his attitude. Scrooge's transformation as he sets out to make amends of his past misdeeds in the original tale. Dickens does this by reframing all of the instances of Scrooge's behavior in the opening act. In other words, Scrooge's altered self has become a direct mirror images of who the audiences will initially introduce to Sazi. His lack of compensation in favor of a more charitable version of himself. He joyfully spreads kindness and cheer to everyone around him, including his employee Bob, whom he had previously mistreated. Scrooge's transformation is not just evident through generosity toward others, but also in his newfound appreciation of the world he lives in. He experiences a renewed sense of wonder and awe at the simple prayer in life, such as the joy of spending time with loved ones and the beauty of the natural world. While A Christmas Carol is a timeless tale of redemption and the importance of treating other with kindness. It's also a satirical reflection on the socio-economic state of Victorian England. At the time of the book's publication in 1843, Victorian England was characterized by a wide gap between the wealthy and the impoverished. The wealthy elite, like Scrooge, often looked down on the less fortunate, and the story is an obvious critique of this mindset. Scrooge's willful ignorance toward the state of those below him on a social ladder reflect the social prejudice being commented during the Industrial Revolution. As a result, Scrooge's transformation is not just a personal but also a symbolic one. He represented a need for the wealthy elite in Victorian society to resist their value, as Dickens uses Scrooge's character development to call for societal changes. The story's message is clear to his position of power and the world must recognize the suffering of those around them and act accordingly. In conclusion, the ending of A Christmas Carol is a powerful moment in the story that demonstrated the importance of compassion and empathy toward others. Through Scrooge's transformation, the story serves as a reflection of the socio-economic state of Victorian England and a critique of the wealthy elite lack of empathy toward the less fortunate. As we continue to revisit this timeless, through numerous adaptations as unfortunately, its message is just as relevant today as it was when it was written. For a deep dive into the ending of A Christmas Carol and how it is by the movie's relationship between characters and him, click the button below to rewatch my video easy on the screenplay. There have been countless adaptations of the Charles Dickens novel A Christmas Carol, with countless film renditions, theatre productions, radio plays, and television adaptations, as well as the obligatory spoof. The popularity of the novel is unquestionable. The latest addition to this list sees Jim Carrey take on hefty amount of role. A Christmas Carol is one of those stories that everyone grew up with. There is no change to the plot in the Robert Zemeckis version, as the predecessing adaptations did, on Scrooge, a man opposed to the Christmas, until he is visited by fourth spirit. There was no doubt that his film was going to impress with its visual effect, but there was slight concern as to whether it would be able to combine the effect with any substance. Thankfully, it managed to mix the two to create film that delivers a delectable visual effect, with a critical punch including a refreshing amount of attention to another too well-known story. The bleak and the melodramatic tone of Dickens' originals captured by Zemeckis perfectly. The atmosphere created chilling and tough in places. It may look bright and cheerful. It managed to mimic the essence of the novel. The small cast all perform well and will be easily recognized by movie buff. The dialogue is practically lifted word for word from the novel. Dickens' precious words and have rarely been delivered this well. Will see his social critic is left intact and has not been sacrificed for the animation. This could well be the most questionable essential adaptations of A Christmas Carol to ever grace cinema. It is a particularly strong contender for this title, especially if some of the adaptations that have been made over the years are considered. Barbie's Christmas Carol, anyone be warned, don't be fooled by the film's animation. This is not a children's story. Bear in mind, even Barbie's Christmas Carol was a little frightening. If you want to watch this with the family, make sure you know if your children can handle the subject matter before popping it onto your TV. Visually lasting and faithful to Dickens' original novel, this proved to be a 3D animated movie that managed to distance itself from a lot of failure that have come to pass over the years. I love animation and I love Christmas film. Not to mention that adore Dickens' story. 2009, A Christmas Carol may not quite be a classic for the season, but it is a worthy film and one of the more loyal adaptations of this story. maintaining not just the detail but the spirit as well. There are few cons actually here. I did feel the film was too long. I personally think 80 minutes is a perfect length for telling the story. This was nearly 100 minutes. In order to do this, while they were musically and visually stunning, there were two scenes that did not quite work for me and could have been omitted. One being the existing of ghosts of Christmas past, the other being the carriage chase. As impressive as they are, they don't enhance the storytelling much and feel odd in their placement too. The film does occasionally drag as well, particularly toward the end. However, there is much to enjoy here. The story has a classic feel in how it is told, appropriately and how to explain the plot of the Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol to someone is tantamount to taking them on a journey of their own past. It is a story woven into the foundation of our modern tradition. It's become synonymous with the holiday ever since its release, and rightfully so. Now imagine all you know about it confoundingly gutted from it and the queering steaming remain. Zemeckis had much to about its at the time dedication to motion capture, technology and its potential application to liberating the mind and capabilities of the director. With body Polar Express and a Beowulf, he seemed to begin to scratch at the surface of justifying this claim, despite struggle with issue surmounting the uncanny valley. A Christmas Carol might have been the base to bring his point home, with his use of familiar and beloved story that had imagery ripe to explore. It might be the piece that sound put his desire to make motion capture animation. The next big thing to rest. Next time he would be a much more subdued manner in the disaster film. Of course, Zemeckis has brought as much wonder and awe in his lifetime with the classic like the Back to the Future, Trilogy, Forrest Gump, Contact, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He is adventurous with the art of the admirable, and he is certainly more than he earned his respect, but we one wondered exactly what he sought to earn by taking all the meaning and character out of such a well-known story. A Christmas Carol could have been well regarded, as are several of the previous adaptations, rather than best forgotten if he had balanced his obvious want for something visually lush with something with a semblance of a heart and humanity. In short, his take relies heavily on spectacle rather than story. You are bounced around from scene to scene and tiresomely long, hourly effect laden for a movie that is purely made for effect. Sequences that could have been better being used to spend time getting to know characters and situation. Indeed, why should we care about the life-changing journey of the and every courage if we are shown so little context to life? What little we do see is so bereft of life and characters that you wonder why anyone would make any other decision Scrooge would make. We get but the briefest of glimpses into his past, present, and fortune in breakneck have made scramble. I've seen that come and go too quickly that they almost seem confusing, but surely feel horribly unimportant in the long run. None of these feelings should go up to while watching something so familiar to Western culture. Make no mistake, reader. This is not a result of a new vision of the material. Sure, it is a darker age to things are but style. Our substances, it is all motto. The source material certainly lends itself to a little creative exploration, but its darker element plays with his child had played with his food rather than eaten it, but to no substantial avail. Scrooge has always been at the core of the story, but those around him make his journey meaningful. Well, a trap on of a soulless ride, boys and girls. You will only get to know the people around him for the briefest and most insignificant amount of time. Our character piece this is not. In this movie had one saving grace, its Jim dedication to portraying the lead role. You could easily see his take transplanted into a better adaptations and finding a home there just fine. This film was intended to be shown in 3D, and while we don't get an uncanny amount of object flying at the screen, we do begin to understand why some scenes play more like a showcases rather than performances. The sad part is that this movie does not even impress on an effect level. The characters' design are hideous or downright laughable. The Ghost of Christmas Past and a descent into the uncanny valley turns into a full-throated plump. The ending and the beginning feel like they are a completely different movie. The longer middle, on the other hand, feel overstuffed with the superficialities and any making validity or meaning. You think you will care about it as it began. Then you realize you are in a roller coaster of images that drums you into apathy. And then the end comes, you like kind of feel angry that try to make it seem like something cathartic truly happened here. Our Christmas Carol is an emotions. It is the God Wolf as an adaptation. It is as something that tries to be new. It got a full as a face of desire, and it is lacking in everything that it should not be lacking. I give this film 1 by 10. I can sum this up in one short phrase. PG-rated horror film. Let me make this clear. This is not a film for kids under 10, or really anyone that is easily for it frightened. I am not saying it's bad film, but this is not a film for small children. These adaptations of the Christmas Carol captures and fleshes out the creepy part of the tale, leaving the warm and fuzzy part a little undercooked. The creepy take on this classic is unique and enjoyable. It's a kind of film that can be enjoyed by a wider audiences than if the story had been left to a genetic frizzy ending that so many films have adapted. The story sports more style than previous adaptations, more pizzazz, more depth, and more scare. I won't lie. There were times when something started me. This film is full of the good scare. Not a silly excuse for joy that are in so many good movies these days. Even this movie is over 2 years old, and motion capture he has gotten significantly better. The animation looks great. Everything is well detailed, and everything feels real. However, there is still some stiffness in the moving, and there is one dance scene where gravity and physics are defied so many times. There is no doubt that even kids can't take this scare, will point them out. I mentioned earlier that this is like a PG-rated horror film. I like this unique aspect, but I thought you might like to know what's ahead of you. A pretty creepy scene where a talking corpses has a conversation with Scrooge. It's not outstanding, it does a good job for setting the mood of each scene, but I have heard much better Christmas score. Jim Carrey does a hilarious job as Scrooge. He is grumpy and despicable, but because you recognize him as Carrey, you can't take him seriously. This is not really a bad thing, but it might irritate your hard Dickens fan. There is also one boring, tedious and completely unnecessary chase scene that make little scene, which was most likely added for the benefit of any kids in the audiences, meaning are brave enough to take this care. Also, the ending is incredible corny. We get the feeling that Carey was overdoing it for his own entertainment. Overall, this is an entertaining flick, and even flawed, is a fun and creepy delight. I recommend this film to anyone who likes Jim Carrey. The Christmas Carol motion capture of the creeps. I already saw this movie. I even saw it in the movie theater when it was released, but since it was a while back and since it was available on Disney Plus, I thought I might as well check it again. I have to admit it. I never really was a huge fan of Robert work, but I have to admit that there has always been something intriguing about his movie. At least some of them. Eventually, from the 3 motion capture feature he had delivered, this one was not good as Beowulf. It was easily the best of ones in my opinion, but it still managed to be better than the creepy The Polar Express. Anyway, I rather enjoyed this feature after all. Indeed, animation was quite awesome, at the time, but more than 10 years later. It did look terribly dated and off. Apparently, I did not see it in 3D when it was released and when I was rewatching it. I actually wished I did because the whole movie was obviously shot to be seen this way. Concerning the story, it is a classic and it was very entertaining, but to be honest, not really much more than that of. Jim Carrey also seemed to have a blast playing Ebenezer. Basically, the only real issue I had was the fact that Zemeckis chose not only again another story based on Christmas, but also one very old tale, which had been told already in so many different versions. And personally, I am not a huge fan of this classic story. Anyway, since it was already his third underperforming effort using this technology, Robert Zemeckis seemed to have robbed this genre. To conclude, even though it was nothing really amazing, it was still pretty impressive visually speaking, at least when it was released. And I think it was worth a look, especially if you are interested in Zemeckis' work. If I could have my way, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stake of the holy through his heart. It's doubtful that any Christmas story is as omnipresent as Charles Dickens since cinema very inception. There have been tons of motion picture adaptations of this 1843 novella, as well as both any updated variation, The Muppets, Mickey Mouse, and even more. Tackle this morality tale. In addition, the characters are ingrained so deeply in popular culture that one only has to utter the name Scrooge. Anyways, majority of the human populace will immediately conjure up images of grumpy, miserable old who demands the spirit of those around him. Therefore, it is logical to ask why the world needs another second version of fake Christmas Carol. The answer is simple. Robert Zemeckis 2009 picture is a Disney branded computer animated spectacle in 3D appropriate for this. Synopsis is mostly taken from my review of the 1984 version because I can't be bothered writing another synopsis. The name fucking story. The imitated Ebenezer Scrooge is one of the cruelest men in London, and Christmas is his least favorite time of the year. With Christmas time upon him yet again, Scrooge could not care less. He is far more concerned with running his business and tutoring assistant Bob upon his arrival home on the evening Christmas Eve. Scrooge is visited by the ghost of his late business partner, Jacob Marley, who warns the old man that his miserly way may lead to his soul big tournament for eternity. As the night wears on, Scrooge is visited by the ghosts of the Christmas past, also the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come, still Jim Carrey, who take the bitter man on a grim, time-traveling journey. Zemeckis' script is remarkably faithful to Dickens' original novella, down to significant moment and most of the dialogue. This finally instantly created a problem. The Victorian English from the original text basically differs from the modern English in terms of grammar, word syntax, and the rhythm. Hence, the dialogue here is quite dry, and children will no doubt have trouble hearing what's being said. Dickens also uses social commentary in his story. The most glaring example is an out-of-place digression in which Scrooge and the ghost of Christmas present take time out of their journey to discuss the practice of closing business on Sunday, presented in this flick without any speculation as to what is being discussed more than a century after stop being controversial result in a huge what the fuck moment. Sticking slavishly to Dickens' novella could have worked, but Zemeckis was not just aiming for a loyal age to screen translation. A Christmas Carol also aspired to be a flashy, eventually Hollywood 3D blockbuster with a broad appeal. The film tried to have his both way, with elaborate set pieces and momentum in an physical comedy. To pander to the 3D gimmick, Zemeckis overplayed the action a few times to underscore various things in an unnecessarily obvious. Our 10 fashion when a more low-key approach would have sufficed. The data of London is the most egregious, is borderline painful. It's clear that its material is present to keep the kids awake, but the picture as a whole is too satisfying and dog for toast. Oddly enough, however, a Christmas Carol still gel from the most part, as the most offensive action only occur in the final third. Furthermore, director Zemeckis is astonishingly competent at staging expositional scene, making the dry dialogue less of a problem. This is also a technically jaw-dropping picture. The film opens with a superlative tracking note shot that takes us on an aerial. A Christmas Carol was released in 3D with extraordinary extra-dimensional effect. The glasses may be a nuisance, but the most memorable and enjoyable way to experience is picture in 3D. The score by the criminally underrated Alan Silvestri also deserve credit. As the flavors of the Christmas season, it even contains notes from various Christmas carols, on top of carrying a general old-fashioned 19th century aura. On a less positive note, characters in motion capture movie are often plagued by dead eye syndrome, and despite technological advancement since 2004, A Christmas Carol cannot convincingly overcome this problem. It's getting there. But Sammy's technology has not come far enough to give his animated character soul. After viewing behind the scenes footage of the original performances, it also seemed the computer failed to replicate all the notes and the performances. Working overtime is star Jim Carrey, who plays several key roles here. Carrey is an interesting and usual casting choices. Working overtime is star Jim Carrey, who plays several key roles here. Carrey is an interesting and usual casting choices, given that Scrooge is defined by his picture statistic. Whereas Carrey is best known for his band of comedic performances, as Carrey has proved in films Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. He is hardly a one-trick pony. Unfortunately, the actor does an admirable job. His voice for Scrooge feels lived in, and amazingly, Carrey successfully inhabits several different characters with different voices. Meanwhile, the rest of the cast are uniformly impressive. The like of Gary Oldman Robin. Although this is a Christmas Carol does not illuminate or expand upon Dickens' original story in any new or meaningful ways. It is a visually engrossing, atmospheric, and at times innovative retelling. Perhaps the world did not need yet another Christmas Carol movie, but Zemeckis' effort is not exactly undesirable. It has more heart and it carries more weight than Hollywood's usual festive output. It's a shame that Zemeckis' script was not given a makeovers before the visual cameras began to roll. Mark this one as flawed but enjoyable and admirable. I had both exciting and nervous feeling. In recent weeks, ghost dozens, maybe even thousands of them, have been appearing in my front room. I have been watching the many film versions. There have been of the Charles Dickens classic in an endeavor to find the best movie adaptations of A Christmas Carol. Every year, around early December, I prepare myself for my Dickens Christmas walk by both reading the book and watching the film. The film version I have always watched is the 1951 adaptation starring alongside him. I consider it the finest version ever made and be, because it brings back happy childhood memories of when it was also always on TV. However, in 2013, I was asked to appear as an interview on Channel 5's greatest Christmas movie ever to talk about the various film versions of Christmas Carol. As it happened, they did not want me to speak about the Ella Stephenson version but rather the Muppet Christmas Carol and Bill Murray's Scrooge, neither of which I am ashamed to say I had actually seen. I have to say I loved them both, in particular the Muppets version, which more or less stuck closer to Dickens' original story than practically any other film's version. Apart from giving Charles Dickens a big blue nose and introducing us to the Marley twin in order to make use of both terror and wardrobe. I thought Michael Caine gave one of the best performances of Scrooge I have ever seen. Imbuing him with a pathos that suggests he is Scrooge, not Michael, is very much a product of a miserable past. It set me wondering about all the different film adaptations there must have been over the year, and I so decided to begin researching the various incarnations of Ebenezer Scrooge by compiling a list of the many adaptations of A Christmas Carol, and having done so, I set about watching as many of them as I could. Below you will find a selection of the different adaptations together with my thought on each one. Some of them are superb, some are middling, and a few are downright awful. But they at least present us with a wonderful chronologically of the various renditions of the second greatest Christmas story ever told, together with a terrific insight into the many and varied ways in which actors have portrayed Scrooge over the more than 150 years since Dickens created him. I hope you enjoy these variation renditions, and should you happen to know, if you happen to encounter any online versions I have not included, please let me know in our order, then I can add them to the page. This is an ongoing project, and eventually it is the intention to have a review of every film version of A Christmas Carol. So please do be sure to check back regularly for update and new reviews. The early version I have been able to back down is this complete silent film by Robert W. Paul that is from 1901. It is already credited acclaim, the earliest known version of A Christmas Carol on film. It's okay to think that when this was made, Dickens had only been dead for 30 years, and there were people around who had met him, who had even heard him read aloud from the book. Keep an eye on that section in scene 2 when Mary's face manifests on the door knocker, and ordinarily makes a brief appearance the back of the Scrooge's head. Given that this is a silent movie, and Dickens himself was such a dedicated warm spirit, it's interesting to watch a Dickens stories being told without any actual word being spoken. This 1923 silent version, in which Russell 1985 took on the role of Dickens and Skinfight. And dear reader, I shall leave you in suspense. I bet you can't guess which world-renowned character they are going to bring to life. Alright then, it was Ebenezer Scrooge, and despite the fact that the film is black and white, silent, and to say the least, dated, it does have a terrific atmosphere. In the first scene, we encountered Scrooge sitting menacingly at his desk, counting up his ill-gotten gain. Willis, he is the downtrodden clerk, sits at a desk in an outer, dismal cell, trying desperately to warm himself by a solitary candle. You find yourself thinking, this Scrooge head chappy must be squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching. Old sinner, largely on account of the fact that these exact words have just flickered across the screen in front of you. Either way, Bob's Christmas cell is a total mess, and if I were Scrooge, I would tell him firmly, no turkey for you, Bob, crash it unless you tidy your room. Anyway, back to the story. Bob decided to sneak into the office of his grumpy old employer in order to acquire a little coal for his fire, which given as far as I could tell, he does not actually have fire in this dismal cell. It's a bit of pointless exercise, so it is little wonder that Scrooge sent him packing with a flea in his ear. At least I think he does. It's difficult to tell with a silent film. Suddenly, nephew Fred comes in menacing in through Scrooge's door to wish him the compliment of the season, only to have his good wishes stabbed back at him with the words, "Humble, Christmas time is a time to pay bill, and a time for finding yourself a day older." Fred evidently finds this hilariously and throws his bed in mid, before sitting down at his uncle's desk and lecturing him on the virtues of enjoying Christmas, etc. Whilst this is going on, Bob, in his outer dismal cell, appeared to have developed a several tact as he seemed to be constantly lobbying in Scrooge's general direction. Scrooge, of course, has no truck with his fresh love of Christmas and bids him a slow good afternoon. Fred heads into the old and foggy film set, where he encounters a cheeky street urchin, whom he flips a coin to. With Fred gone, and Boy takes up a position outside Scrooge's office and begins to sing a Christmas carol. Whereupon Scrooge picks up a massive ledger, rushes out and smashes the urchin over the head, before subjecting the poor boy to an assault vicious that they would not be in the least surprised if the actor playing the part of the jolly caroler did not seek compensation of injuries received. Evidently, the film's budget would only stretch to one charity gentleman, who pops in to implore Scrooge to contribute generously to the welfare of the poor, only to receive the well-known homily about the Union workhouse, albeit the bit about the poor rather dying and decreasing the surplus population is omitted. No doubt on the grounds that somebody had just looked at the clock and realized that it still had an awful lot to cram into the remaining 16 minutes of running time. So just like nephew Fred before him, the charity gentleman is bide good afternoon. Passing as he leaves, he turns and appears to laugh and insult and Scrooge. If my eyes were not deceiving me, respond with a very rude hand gesture. And so our journey continues via a brief stop at the home of Mrs. Fred and her sister who are preparing for Christmas. We head back to the Scrooge office where he reluctantly gives his downtrodden clerk the next day off and then heads for quiet Christmas Eve by his fireside, where he intends to brood over the stupidity of the Christmas festivities. Unfortunately, his Christmas abroad is rudely interrupted by the sudden appearance of his dead partner, Jacob Marley, who Scrooge dismissed as nothing more than his liver being out of order. Sitting down, the transparent phantom tells Scrooge that he is to be haunted by his spirit, at which news Scrooge shakes his head, no doubt pointing out that this awful lot ghostly activity to cram into the remaining 13 minutes of running time. The pedicement is not helped by the fact that old Jacob insists on repeating as many of the lines from the book as he interlaces nimble finger can drop, which uses up almost 2 more minutes of precious running time. The result is that no sooner has Jacob's revenue shuffled off with his mortal. Hang on, you can hear Scrooge thinking, what about my school days? An old facing Christmas jig. That was always my favorite part. Sorry, says the ghost, there are 2 more spirit and redemption yet, and there are only 8 minutes left. And with that, the ghost quickly shows him getting the old have to by his former lover. Before Scrooge appears to have a fight and his ghost vanishes. Next up, Santa Orsis and Spirits. The ghost of Christmas present materializes alongside Scrooge's fireplaces and informs him that the ghost will spend tomorrow at your nephew's home, your clerk's home, which is awfully deader than his office, and in the home of all who love Christmas. You can sense Scrooge thinking, I love this part. Watching the Cratchit have lunch, shedding a tear of adorable Tiny Tim joining in unseen Wilfred's Christmas game. Come on, spirit, let's go. Yeah, dream on, senior deep spirit. You are never going to manage all that in the remaining 6 minutes. Instead, the only contribution from the ghost of Christmas present is a miserly rebuke. No, you cannot tempt me to remain, for you have no love for your fellow man, only love for yourself. And so saying, or in this case, typing is off, leaving Scrooge on his knees, lamenting that he is not now the man he was. Suddenly his spirit future turns up, causing poor and Scrooge to apparently suffer a heart attack. Before beckoning him to follow him, where Scrooge sees his own name write large upon gravestone. Shocked by the fact he is destined to die, Scrooge implored the spirit to assure him that he may yet changes this shadow. You have shown me by an altered life, which given the fact that the only shadow he has been shown is that he is going to die, suggests that Scrooge wants a secret of the everlasting life. The spirit Lord has nothing to give, largely because they are doomed to the last 2 minutes of running time, and it promptly vanishes, leaving Scrooge to wake up in his chair by his fireside, where he thanks Jacob merely for helping dispel the shadow outing that would have been. But of course, there is one major character who has been conspicuous by his absence, a character that is not important to the storyline, and who is universally loved, that to execute him for would be unforgivable omission. Yes, you have guessed it. There has no mention of Topper. So in order to right his wrong, we are spirited into a scene in which Topper, who is in love with Mrs. Fred's sister, tries to woo her by the fireside, only to have his patient Mr. and Mrs. Fred who come bargaining into the room, without knowing I could not help but notice, and proceed to inform the love-struck couple to cease with their sinning innocence. As lunch is about to be served and the last thing they want is Topper's sobering over the value want. But no sooner have they sat down to the table than old Uncle Scrooge comes bounding in and gets so many kisses from the woman and his nephew that Topper must have been furious at being cocoa-ordered by the old. The film ends with Scrooge enjoying a beverage by his fireside with his downtrodden tea clerk, which given he is good to feel tailor with the Scrooge, seems a rated old choices of phrase on the part of the and promising to double his salary. And with that he films wraps to his conclusion. I must say that despite the fact that the film is silent and is evidently rushed, it does have a certain atmosphere to it, and the characters, especially Russell, as Scrooge to remain true to how you expect the character to look, and I have to say that I did enjoy it. And so, to use any terms time-honored explanation, wait, sorry, is not in God bless him, wherever he was. The best-known silent adaptations of A Christmas Carol was a 1930s version starring Seymour Kick as the miserly John. In 1935, Seymour Hicks reprised the part he had made his own his the thousandth upstage version, plus the 1913 film adaptations, and played the title role in this the film talking version of Dickens' classic. Hicks gives us a bad-tempered and the Scrooge who delivers his line with such reaching that you genuinely believe he really goes there later everyone he meet. The first 10 minutes or so are wonderfully atmospheric, and you can almost feel the cold emanating from the screen as you watch it. Donald Caltrop as Bob bears such as uncanny resemblance to John Lee's original illustration in the book that he sent off his tapped off the page and on the film set. There is a scene early on when nephew Fred drops by too, quite literally, shout the praise of keeping Christmas, and does it with such animated gusto that he appears to almost set fire to his nose on his Uncle Scrooge candle. Once Scrooge has reluctantly allowed his downtrodden assistant to head home on Christmas Eve, we get taken on a tour of the street of Victorian London, in the course of which we actually get to see Bob Cratchit go down a side on just as he does in the book. In fairness, since this was the first version with sound, there was nothing to look back to as a benchmark, and you get the impression that his screenwriter, Howard Meyer, and the director Henry Edward began with the best of intentions of following Dickens' storyline as faithfully as possible, but that they put so much effort and time into setting up the atmosphere and constructing the gulf between the rich and poor of Victorian London, that by the time Scrooge got home for the start of his Christmas Eve redemption, there was no money left in the kitty to do anything else. There is, for example, an eccentric scene as Scrooge makes his way home, during which we are treated to visit to the Lord Mayor banquet attended by a cast of so many extras that the cost of their costumes alone probably blew the larger part of the film's budget. We then get shown the kitchens below, where the cooks are preparing the Christmas Eve feast. Will see poor folk of older London town scrabble hungrily outside the window, begging for a few morsels to be cast in their direction. Their wish being duly obligated by our chief, who proceeded with filling the leftover, Adam in a way that is the reminiscent of feeding them at the zoo. This scene also provides the marker with the opportunity to straddle to the boundary between the silent film and Taki's taking what appeared to be a nostalgic trip down memory lane, and including a slapstick routine that featured two joyful wine waiter overlimbing jellies wobbling in unison. We default a flesh on effect that staple of slapstick humor. You find yourself just waiting for the first custard pie to be thrown, but instead we get the film's only musical number when the ensemble guests rise to their feet and give us a string rendition of God Save the Queen. At which point the film cuts to the staring, scrabbling poor outside a kitchen window who are also standing to attention and singing along as well. How's that for gritty social realism? It's a huge leap when he films cut back to the Scrooge, who continues his homeward journey through the sour, hurling, rasping insult at every man and dog he met. It's at the point that you sense the money moon taking the director to one side and telling him, "Look, that banquet scene was great, but we are afraid the money is running out. You are going to have no cut stuff." "What stuff?" you can hear the directors asking. "Well," replied the honeymoon, stroking jerkins and taking a sharp intake of bread. "Those ghosts are they really unnecessarily." Thus, we get a version of Christmas Carol that opts for a somewhat radical approach to the story by doing away with the majority of the spirit. Merely, for example, is nothing more than our disembodied voices the homes the crows conduct an entirely conversation will sucking to an empathy. Our hopes are raised when these ghosts of Christmas past begin to be materialistic, but then it doesn't quite manage it, and you get the distinct impression that the special effect budget ran out halfway through the scene. Thereafter, Scrooge ventured off along memory lane, accompanied by nothing more than a spooky voice, and what appeared to be an annoying smudge on the camera lens. He himself plays the part of Scrooge's younger self, which, given the fact he was 64 years old at the time, and looked it seems slightly creepy when he was in German with his financial belly, and you find yourself asking what could possibly have attracted such a pretty young woman to an old millionaire like Ebenezer Scrooge. When Bell sends him picking because something else has replaced her in his affection, you can't help but wonder if that something else was Viagra. Following Bell's rejection of him, there is a scene which is in the book, but which is the often left out of film version, when the ghost of Christmas past tells Scrooge to look and see the happiness you have missed. We then witness Belly as he happily married, doting mother of so many children. I counted at least 16. That deep down, Scrooge must have been thinking he's lucky sir that he gave him the old here to all those years ago. We do get a full-blown, and must be said, splendidly raunchy ghost of Christmas present, but this is a flaw followed by worthy pieces of shadow property out to pick the ghost of Christmas yet to come. This version is almost unique in that it's a one of only two versions that shows in Trump lying dead on his bed. Was the other version to do this, and the scene where a tearful Bob, his dead son's besides he is generally moving. Although the poignancy is slightly married by the fact we catch a brief glimpses of a crew member finger pulling the bedroom door shut behind him. I am sure it won't spoil anything by revealing that it all comes right in the end, and Scrooge is as good as his word about being a better employer and friend to Bob Cratchit. So much so that when, in the final scene, we see Scrooge shuffles nervously up a church style to just the train of Hawk the Highland Angel sing, and watch him lay as trembling land on Bob Cratchit's arm. Couldn't turn smile and look into his eyes. You almost expect the film's last word to be one to do. All in all, this is a genuine piece of the Dickens film history, and as such as is well worth watching, if only for its curiosity value. Its antiquated feel certainly adds to the atmosphere. And who needs ghosts when you are get a particularly annoying collection of crashed children? The part of Scrooge was originally intended to be played by Lionel Barrymore. He had performed the role on his annual Christmas radio show for many years previously, and the radio had hoped to be take advantage of his popularity. Unfortunately, Barrymore was crippled with the arthritis at the time and was barely able to walk, so he suggested the Owen as his replacement. This was the first American film version of Christmas Carol. MGM's determination to make this the family-friendly film meant that it took certain liberties with the original storyline as it attempted to tone they had saw as the unsuitable element of Dickens' narrative. In this version, there are no phantoms wandering here and theater outside Scrooge's window. His doomed romance with his finance belly is doomed to have never happened. The wretched, frightful, hideous children, want and ignorance, are nowhere to be seen, let alone covering within the fold of the robes of the ghosts of Christmas present, and the thieves who Scrooge's room for his demise in the Christmas yet to come sequences are also by the absence. Instead, we are left with the sugar-coated Dickens, in which even the staring figure look like they could benefit for a New Year crash diet. Reginald Owen does not make a particularly convincing Scrooge, and the makeup used to be as him is even less convincing. Jen and Kathleen Lockhart are the crashed family, who are so glowingly irritating that you find yourself wishing that the informed Scrooge would revert to type and poison to the turkey before he sent to them. That's sad. This version most certainly has redeeming feature. It does, for example, possess the warmth of the original Dickens story and with its overall feel-good factor. It is easy to see what has remained the most famous version on American televisions until as illustrated Sims adaptations began to receive wider spread exposure in the 1970s. Vincent Price narrating one of the greatest ghost stories ever told. What could possibly go wrong? Well, you could give him a dodgy beard and an even doggier bow tie. You could stick him on a set and would not be out of place in Victorian children's nursery. For good measure, you could call it a Charles Dickens, The Christmas Carol. In addition, you could give Scrooge an extra in his first name and bill him as Ebenezer. Whilst you are at it, why not have Price narrate in his best ghost of Christmas at performances that are so hammy that it would be out of place in the table a feasting feast, and you can't help thinking that the entire cast and company must have watched the premiere with a gold help as everyone. Even Scrooge, played nearby Taylor Holmes, seemed somewhat embarrassed by it all, and he repented his past with such little resistance and speed that the ghost must have been wondering if it had been worth of the effort appearing to him. Still, you get it told the story by the Vincent Price, so it's not all about bad. Too many people reckoning this is the best version of a Christmas Carol ever made, and there is a little doubt that is the one version of the story that will and truly deserve to be labeled a Christmas classic. Sim is as superb as Scrooge, and Michael Horton gives such a splendidly over-the-top performances as the ghost of Jacob Marley did. If I were Scrooge, I refuse to ever perform in the hope that he will be keep coming back and repeating it. That said, I does take certain liberties with Dickens' original story. We are, for example, given a backstory for Scrooge as a man of business that is noticeably absent from the book. Although Scrooge's financial return, after having been jilted by the producers in the MGM 1938 version, she has, for reasons that are never explained, changed her name to Alice. There is a suggestion, again absent from the book, that the reason for Scrooge's resentment of his nephew. Fred is that murdered Scrooge's beloved sister, dead giving birth to him. The film also suggests that Scrooge's own father resent him because his wife Scrooge's murder, that giving birth to him. This was most certainly not be fair that Dickens and in mind for Mrs. Scrooge as in the book. His sister Fan is much younger than him. But then again, as Scrooge himself observed, the spirit can do anything. Of course they can. Of course they can. But you really care about liberties when you have such a first rare film version as this. It's well acted, well told, well presented, and is draw so close. You find yourself most certainly wanting to ask for more. Wrong back. Don't you sometimes find yourself longing for those long ago Christmas when it always snowed, when happy folk in jolly bond and furry moths walk about the street, bursting into song at every drop of a hat, and you came downstairs on a Christmas morning to find a Santa had been in the night and had left a shiny new crystal in Christmas stocking whilst you are sleeping. In this 1954 airing detail, which was brought to us by the Crystal Corporation, a fact we keep getting reminded of throughout. Frederick March seeks a massive gong over his own nose and accompanied by a star-lacking cast, many of whom appear to have stepped straight out the sets of those annoying 1950s Washing Powder commercial. He treated as the television first musical version of A Christmas Carol. From the opening moment when an annoying boy and a merry band of equally annoying carols sing us through the snowy street of Old London, to the closing moment when a particularly cringly worthy tune in time asks Scrooge, "Would you like to hear my Christmas song?" You find yourself trapped in your own nightmare, wondering if the clipped tone of the fake British accent could sound any more forced, or the acting could get any more bojan. Only to find that the answer to both questions is a resounding yes. Frederick March as Scrooge bears an uncanny resemblance to William Hartnell, the first Doctor Who was, given I spent a large part of the production hiding behind the sofa. Most certainly did bring back happy childhood memories of Christmas past. The ghost of Jacob Marley is played by Basil, who holds a large ledger in a manner that leaves you just waiting for him to utter the words, "Ebenezer Scrooge, this is your life." Scrooge is singularly unimpressed by all this and remembers the apparition, who by now is holding its hand in a pose that is the reminiscence of charming copper, just like that. By telling him, "I often hear it said in your life, Jacob, merely that you had no ball, except the pronounced ball as ball, with the result that, when he adds, now I can see that is true, you must feel shortchanged by the fact that Basil has his back to the camera." Sally Fraser as the ghost of the Christmas past takes him back to the fusing party where we see him as he used to be